Da 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 da. Ba da 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 da.
Welcome to Scumm Podcast, episode 55, where we talk movies, video games, pop culture, books, fly you fools, and everything in between. I'm your host, Mattbrush, and with me today is my co-host, all the way off from the Shimmering Isles. He's one of the Blue Wizards. His name is...
Anth0z. Oh, that's difficult. It's very difficult.
Welcome, Anth0z, to the Scumm Podcast. Admittedly, this is our second take because one of us wasn't recording, but I'm not going to name names. I'll just say it was one of the Blue Wizards.
That was definitely not your bad.
Welcome to Scumm Podcast, where we like to just ramble and talk about whatever. This week, it just happens to be Lord of the Rings. I'm kind of nerding out, but I can't wait. I'm just really excited about this episode because we get to talk about Lord of the Rings and all things amazing about it.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to just have a whole nerd fest about it.
Today we will be the Lord of the Rings.
We shall be the Lord of the Rings. But before we get into any of that, Anth0z, is there anything going on in your life you want to talk about?
What else is new? Oh, so other than finishing Lord of the Rings, I also finished Gone Girl, the audiobook. So I was listening to that. I went through it pretty fast, and it's an approximately 18-hour audiobook.
Yeah.
By hour 16, I realized I had actually seen the movie, but it took me that long to get there. To me, that means either 1, the movie was not that memorable, 2, the movie in itself was a terrible adaptation and not like the audiobook or the book whatsoever.
Screenplay adaptation.
Yeah, exactly. Screenplay
as we learned from last week's episode.
Yeah. The book itself, I was so torn. I think I was halfway through. I'd say I was fairly enjoying it for the first half, and then all of a sudden, the way that the author presents stuff, like it just like it throws everything out of whack, and I was so torn with, do I keep, like, I don't like that this just happened this way.
Right.
Okay. Without saying too much about it, it's really just like I don't enjoy that it's all about people treating each other poorly. That's pretty much what it is. There are 2 people you follow, and I don't know if it's right to say either of them are the protagonist, because they both just treat each other like crap, and then everybody else around them treats them also like crap, and they treat other people like crap, and it's just like, why is this the core of the story, and why do so many people enjoy this? I mean, I guess people like drama, but this is just, I don't know. I want like a good payoff, but I just did not get that with this book. Sorry, I didn't mean to rant about it, but
Totally fine. I can tell you that doesn't happen in Lord of the Rings.
That is true. Yes, that is true.
Okay, well, Anth0z, before we go into our topic, which we're not going to do in topic number 1 or 2 today, we're just going to talk about Lord of the Rings entirely.
Wait, what's new with you? You skipped you.
Oh, I was just going to say I had pierogies for dinner.
Nice.
I cooked some pierogies, and you know what I
it.
can say? You can have original, regular pierogies, throw some butter and salt on them, and you're good to go. You don't need anything else. That's all you need.
Nice. No veggies? No.
Nothing. Literally just pierogies.
No rice? No sour cream?
No. Just fried up pierogies with salt. It was great. I loved it. All right. Well, let's break into something I like to call the Lord of the Rings.
Ooh.
Now, let me be clear, or let me just try to make a sort of a ground
rule. You be clear, I'll be Aragorn.
Okay.
Haha.
Hey! I'm just going to do a ground rule at the beginning. I'm going to try my hardest not to talk about the movies at all. I'm trying to make this about the books.
Okay. Ooh, that'll be
It's
difficult.
very hard not to compare the movies and the books for certain scenes.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a few times where I'm talking about the books where I'm going to talk about surprises about how the book is different from the movie. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I did watch the movies first before I read the books. And if you don't know on this podcast here, I go through these books yearly now. I've been doing that for the last 4 or 5 years.
You almost do them quarterly. I feel like you're going to do it quarterly.
No, I go through them yearly, but this last year I've gone through them twice in the year. So yeah. I've kind of upped my game, but I got inspired a bit by you because you were reading the book at the same time. So I was thinking, actually I got inspired on this podcast, but so I got inspired by you. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll finish it and we'll end around the same time, then we can talk about it. And everything came true. And here we are talking about Lord of the Rings. So there's going to be a few times when I'm comparing the book and the movie, and I'm not trying to talk about the movie. It's just that I feel like it helps me understand why I like the book more. So that's just my pre-emphasis. Do you have anything you want to say before we jump into the Lord of the Rings?
Well, it's gonna be very difficult not to talk about the movie or relate things to the movie, because when I do read the books, because I did watch the movie first, I have those character images in my head as I'm reading the books. Also the scenes,
exactly, yeah,
like, and I'm
the imagery, the music, it's all there while you're going through it, right? Yeah,
it is all there, and I might not be able to differentiate while we're discussing it, but I'll try my best. We'll see what happens.
I've wrote some notes kind of just to help us go through this. They're sort of in order. I tried to break them down from like books 1, 2, then 3, 4, then 5, 6, just to kind of help us guide us along. It's gonna jump around a bit, but we'll try our best to go in order, and should be fairly obvious to anyone who's coming into this. If you don't know the Lord of the Rings story, we are going to spoil the whole thing right now. So honestly, even if you knew the ending, and I think most people do know the ending, you could go through the whole story and you'll get something new every single time. And that's why I still go through the book now, is because every time I pick that thing up and go through it, there is something else that just gets me more and more. So we're going to start first with books 1 and 2, which everyone knows is the Fellowship of the Ring. So it's the first part of Lord of the Rings, which is typically 3 parts. And this is my favorite part of the book. I don't know why, but I find it the easiest to read or go through. I typically listen to this on audiobook, so I should, when I say read, I mostly I'm listening to Robert Inglis on the audiobook version talk to me with it all. But books 1 to 2, they're pretty much my favorite part of the whole thing. I don't know why, but it gets me in a lot of ways. But let's talk about it. Now I know you just finished Return of the King. How long has it been since you've been reading Fellowship?
Oh boy,
that was a while back, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty guilty of being really slow and not retaining the information very well, because
you did good with Return of the King. Like, I got to give you props for that. That was pretty fast.
Yeah, I did read that faster than I'd read the other ones. I think as I progressed through the books, then I started to read them faster and faster, and I would say that's due to Tolkien's language. Okay. The language that he used, but also, I mean, it's kind of like Lord of the Rings. I mean, sorry, it is like Lord of the Rings. It's kind of like
a little bit like it.
It's so for me, I would attribute to being similar to Game of Thrones in that watching the first episode, there's so many things I have to get used to. So mainly the names, but all the houses, a lot of things, and so it takes me a while before I can retain that information and then use it quicker while I'm trying to take new knowledge in from watching more episodes. So reading through the books, in the beginning it was a little bit difficult, and then as it progressed, I guess I got used to it, so I could read it faster and faster. I also think it has to do with, like, once we got to the Two Towers, for me there was a little bit more action, and I guess maybe even dialogue. So the action and dialogue kind of helped me push along faster, and then even more so in Return of the King.
Yeah, definitely in Return of the King for sure.
Yeah, but I would say probably a few months since I started Fellowship, so it's been a while.
And like, you're definitely right with Lord of the Rings. It's a dense book with a lot of lore and culture to it, and as most people probably know already, it's more than just this book. There's a lot of lore beyond the book. So there's writings of Tolkien before. There's Unfinished Tales. There's Silmarillion. There's The Hobbit. There's Children of Húrin, I think, which is another one of his, but his son Christopher Tolkien had to come up with that.
Cool.
And all these are adapted works that just kind of like create more of why Lord of the Rings is so amazing, is because every sentence you read, every single thing in there is part of something so much larger. And Tolkien definitely does it on purpose. He does it to make you feel like you're just a small part of the story. And not only does he tell you that many times through his own characters, but he shows you that with his objects and his world building. So that's why I think people find him quite wordy with his books, but it's also what makes him great. So it can be a little jarring at first, but it works really well in my opinion. Once you're obsessed with the material, then there's so much more now to comb through because it's there.
Comb the desert. Yeah, I really I like your usage, world building, because he really does a good job in doing that. He's wordy, but I think it is for a reason. Like, he has all these like the lore is very important for actually getting to know each of the cultures, right? Like,
for sure.
If you you're learning about hobbits, and you're also learning about dwarves and orcs, elves, human races, wizards. Like that they are all very, very different types of characters with different roles and also different motivations. So without all that lore, I mean, also these things are like, these are races that we don't see in modern day. Like we definitely don't have all these types of characters exactly. I mean, people may portray some of their actual I guess yeah, you could portray some of those, from some of their characteristics in terms of their vigor, or like their faith towards their culture, or their faith towards other people, things like that. But without really knowing all that lore, you're missing out on so much more that helps you understand the characters. Like the hobbits, I find they're kind of simple, but at the same time, like it's difficult for me to get a grasp of them, because like they kind of are complex. Just that
they're very complex. You're right.
Yeah, like just because I'm not used to understanding their mentality, or just the like, what is it that they find is appropriate or not appropriate, and like what is their world like, and without all those details to get me immersed, then I wouldn't be able to connect with them in a way that I think is necessary for watching them go through this journey.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's something to remember and to note too, is that the Lord of the Rings can seem extremely cliche to people today looking back on it. But it's really not, because most of this was created from back then. Most of this was started with Lord of the Rings. So we see a lot of these like tropes kind of thing today with fantasy. Elves and dwarves hating each other, for example. That's such a common trope in fantasy. All of this was started through Tolkien's works. So it's not just him making a good fantasy novel. It's him literally creating the fantasy novel and taking it very seriously. And then everyone rolling down after that, right? Something you see all the time is the dwarven society that is ancient and like wrecked, and like you don't get to see them thriving, right? Like Skyrim, it comes to mind, Skyrim right away, because the dwarves are like an ancient society that you barely see, but they were prevalent back in the day. That's so common in fantasy, but again, that starts with Tolkien. It's all there. But so to segue into books 1 and 2, what better way to start a story than to just take it to, like you said, the hobbits, who are they're hard to figure out what they are, who they are, how they act, but they're really good as a POV character, because from the hobbits, they are just stuck in the Shire. They don't really necessarily care about the rest of the world. So it's really good for us, the readers, to start with one civilization, with one like race of people, and learn about their lives. And it's really interesting learning about the hobbits in the Lord of the Rings, just because we can relate to them on so many levels of food and like culture, and just they are just like a peaceful little society. They're just kind of happy with how they are, but you can also tell that life used to be a little bit more adventurous for them not that long ago, and as the years have gone by, they've almost got a little bit more secluded. Like they've almost kind of shut themselves out from adventure, and we see that obviously in the Hobbit, but in Lord of the Rings it starts to you can tell from the dialogue, at least, that they're saying there was a war in the Shire back in the day, kind of thing, and they had fought. That those kinds of things are mad. People don't talk about that today. People just talk about happy things, and if somebody was to bring that up at a table, that there used to be something beyond the borders of the Shire, everyone just thinks that person's weird and they don't want to talk about it anymore.
Actually, that reminds me, I like how each of the factions, I guess each of the different cultures or whatever, or people, they all have some sort of they all come from a world where there are tales of previous dwellers, previous people that had adventures, or people that were part of such and such kingdom and things like that. So I think that kind of adds to getting a chance to know them better. I also like how the hobbits, I find they're the ones that kind of have no filter.
For sure, yes.
Like
it's a charming no filter, right?
It is very charming.
Everyone's charmed by the hobbits. Not one person goes, "You're annoying, I don't want to talk to you." Everyone eventually laughs and goes, "What are you saying? Like what? What are you? I want to know more." Like
exactly. Like they're I guess they're isolated, but then they're very like curious kind of people, right? Whereas you get some of the other humans and elves and stuff where it's probably part of their language, and maybe to show they have a little bit more sophistication. But the thing is, a lot of what they say is, it almost sounds more like implications. So it's kind of like they're beating around the bush and you take some time to understand, whereas the hobbits it's like a very
They're
refreshing
straight to the
viewpoint.
point.
It's just like, what, like,
well,
who are you? Why are you here?
The hobbits say it like it is, and then the elves are more like stuck up almost in a weird way. Like, I like how you said sophisticated. That's better. But
but you're going with stuck up.
That's how you can see it, though. Like, the humans purposely choose not to say everything all at once. The elves, let's say, have sophistication and grace. The dwarves and the hobbits, which is funny because of the book The Hobbit, but the dwarves and the hobbits are a lot more in culture together. They just kind of say exactly what they're thinking. But the hobbits also have a bit more of that kind of hospitality to them that allows them to like talk to anyone, and I just think that's hilarious. And throughout actually even books 1 and 2, you do see a lot of like elves who talk to Frodo, and when they're talking to Frodo, our main character, they even compliment him on his Elvish. You know, they go, "Oh, I see that you're learned in the Elvish." Like they can tell that he speaks the Elvish tongue because or at least that he knows the Elvish tongue, because the way he communicates with them, he's able to understand what they're saying, and they appreciate that. And it's just funny. It's like whoever they meet, no matter what it is, they charm them so quickly. So
yeah, and that's probably a really good way to start off the book, because then if you're going to be following these characters throughout the rest of the series and you're starting with them, it seems like it's a good idea to have them be able to charm people, because then they can you're getting the audience used to, or you're getting the readers used to the idea of camaraderie.
For sure,
right? Because that's going to be something that goes through every single character and their extended interactions with other people, and then throughout the whole series, right?
They really set that up with Sam. When you first meet Sam, he is just Frodo's gardener, and he's also really like, he just says really dumb things, and like you see him as a funny kind of lame character. He's like, I think he's purposely funny and lame in the first chapter or so, and then it's when he's sent on the quest with Frodo, he just seems kind of like this lackey, you know. But it's not until you get to a really good scene where Frodo Frodo, like, actually I'll get into that later, but yeah, when you get to this really good scene where Frodo and Merry and Sam and Pippin are all together, and Merry and Pippin have already, they know that Frodo's on this major quest to go and do something, right? Because Frodo's apparently acting weird, and they tell Frodo this. They say, like, you're acting weird, like, we know you're up to something, you might as well just tell us what it is. And Frodo's shocked because he thinks he's so secret about the whole thing. He's like, how could you possibly know? And then they're just like, you've been acting so, like, we're your best friends, and we've been seeing you act so weird for so long now. They're like, it's obvious. But then when they say the reason we know is because they say Sam's noticed this in you, and we think it's a ring. So they actually understand that they think it actually is a quest about a ring, and it's this dark quest that Frodo's on, and Sam was the one who came up with the theory that it's possibly the ring. And at that moment, the reader, I think, also is sort of like, oh, I'm charmed by Sam now. Like, now I understand Sam, because he's actually not dumb. He's been paying attention the whole time.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. He actually does care. Yeah.
I think that's a really good turning point, and it really creates that camaraderie between all the hobbits. But so let me just first say the whole Shire thing in the book is so slow compared to the movie. This is a comparison point where I just want to say that the really big difference in the Shire in the book and the Shire in the movie is that in the movie everything's really quick. It goes through, it tells you everything that's got to happen, and then as soon as that ring is mentioned, we're throwing horses in, and we're throwing Sam and Frodo out the window at night, you know, so they can just escape.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And it's really quick. Like, it's just like, hey, go, you must go now, you know. And he's like, I'm on this quest, I can cross mountains, Gandalf. And he's like, he's going crazy. In the books, like, Gandalf's like, you know, okay, this is a crazy ring, you're eventually gonna have to take this on a journey. And Frodo's like, okay, well, how can I go about this in a safe and secure manner? Like, so he like sells his house, and he goes
avoid all pain.
And, he buys a whole new home in Bree, and he travels with Merry and Pippin and Sam, and the whole town believes him that he's just moving off to Bree because he's getting a little bit weird now. He becomes 50. He ages to 50 years old before anything starts. So it's been some time. He was told at like 26 that this is the ring, and then at 50 is when he's like, all right, I'm going.
Do they age faster, like, you know, like dog years? Is that how hobbits work?
I don't know. It is the middle of the earth, so I don't know.
50
is there
the
a sun
new
there?
27?
Maybe it goes by quickly. I don't know.
Right, or maybe just the Shire rotates on its own, just kind of quickly, and nobody really realizes.
Maybe. When I was a kid, I thought Middle Earth meant the center of the Earth. So I thought that they were trying to say they were in the center of the Earth. I was really confused by Middle Earth. I didn't understand it was its own thing.
Wait, what does Middle Earth mean? Because I think whenever I pictured it, I didn't really dwell on it, but in my head, I just pictured there are 3 Earths, and they're in the one that's in the middle.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting.
Middle Earth. I don't know.
I don't know. I actually think it's a more nerdy name for the whole atlas of it, but there is like a world of Middle Earth that I think there's another name for it. But anyways, it's just supposed to be his world. It's his God, what's the Game of Thrones one? I can't remember now. I've forgotten all of the Game of Thrones lore now, but regardless, Game of Thrones also has one.
Yeah, shoot.
Westeros?
Nope.
Westeros. Yeah.
But isn't Westeros... Oh, I thought Middle Earth was... Okay, never mind. Maybe
wait,
Westeros.
hold on. Maybe Westeros is just the
Westeros
west side.
is just like a city.
Yeah, there's a Westeros, there's an Easteros, and then there's...
Is there actually
there's Essos. Sorry, there's Essos. Essos. Anyways, regardless, that's Game of Thrones lore.
There's Chevron.
I've seen the Middle Earth... Actually, I've got the Middle Earth map somewhere nearby. But,
nice.
Anyways, yeah, I don't totally understand the Middle Earth map too much, but I know the Third Age part of the map.
Oh, speaking of that, sorry, I want to mention, I love that these books actually include the maps and like the routes and stuff like that.
Well, that's an important part of Tolkien, is that he was like a cartographer and he was a historian and he was linguistics. He was into linguistics, or whatever the creation of languages is called. I can't remember what that is, but that's what he loved mostly. But to be able to do that stuff, he had to start to create some story. So it's more like, that's what also makes Lord of the Rings amazing, is that he put all that on the forefront and then he put the story last, because the story was like something that he didn't necessarily care about at first, but it started to kind of make itself as he started to create these languages, right? So but yeah, those maps are insane. Yeah, they are. I think it really helps with
actually having a visual of the journey, because you can have you can read all these details, but when you're trying to imagine the scale of what they're actually doing, it's very difficult, because you're in a world with made up names, and it's not like he's saying, well, they traveled 50 meters to get to the tree, and then they traveled 5,000 meters to get to this hut or whatever, right? So having the visual is really cool, because then, like, man, they traveled far.
They did.
Like,
they
traveled
really did.
far. Yeah. So I'm happy that he included the maps, because it really helped me put a little bit more into perspective, like the actual the tribulations of the journey, or just the treacherous journey is what I want to say. Yeah, that.
Another thing, I think we talked about this before too, but Merry and Pippin, I find in the books are much more real characters than they are in the movies. I understand why they are the way they are in the movies. I totally get it. But Merry and Pippin in the books are just so awesome. And they remind me of my friends. Like the whole beginning of books 1 and 2, when it's Merry and Pippin and Frodo and Sam, and they're all on their walking adventure together, and they're just going through the forest, and they're just going to Farmer Maggot's crop, and they're stealing the mushrooms, and then they spend the night there, and Frodo's scared of his dogs and all that. There's so much of it that just reminds me of being a kid again, with all my buddies just running into the forest with sticks, fighting each other, And Merry and Pippin, they're not dumb. They're just like Frodo and Sam. They're just
not
on
at
a
all
different path.
That's right. They have a little bit more, I guess, like, attitude. I don't know if that's the right word. I mean, or they have quite a different attitude, because in the
more depth,
probably more depth. Yeah, because I mean, it's I think maybe what you were thinking about, like, the reason why that they are not portrayed the same in the book or in the movie as the book, is because if they had been, then they would have been overshadowing Frodo and Sam, which. And they needed to be the focus for the rest of the movie.
And there had to be a comic relief, because Frodo was so dire while Sam is so protective. There had to be something to make it more funny.
Right.
And it really works in the movie. It works very well. But the book just tells you a bigger story. So to get that bigger story, you need different character arcs and different character portrayals. Now, Pippin is arguably still the comic relief in the book. He still says funny things. He still is usually the last to understand what's going on. And he's also made fun of by Gandalf quite a bit. Gandalf makes fun of Pippin all the time. He does say "fool of a took" a lot. So, I'm trying to remember right now. Is it Pippin? Yeah, Pippin and Frodo are related. They're cousins. I was trying to remember who was somebody was related out of them, but I couldn't remember who. Moving on though, let's get into Tom Bombadil. Do you remember him in the books very well?
So I wouldn't say I remember him very well, but I remember him, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was somebody who was sort of like a myth, or like I guess kind of a legend. Like, people knew him through tales, but nobody had ever seen him, or at least the hobbits had never seen him or met
no
him.
one in the Shire knows who he is. He's not a character that anyone in the Shire knows about. In fact, I would argue that most people in Middle Earth don't know Tom Bombadil. The only people that would are the wizards, possibly the elves. Actually, the elves would probably know him.
So then, because for some reason I recall a part where they were maybe reciting some sort of tale that had to do with Tom. Like, Tom Bombadil was in that poem or something, but they just passed it off as being some sort of just tale or like story that got passed on through the centuries, and nobody had ever really met him. But
I don't remember. That might have happened.
I might have
missed. Too sure.
I might have misread or misunderstood.
There is a moment at the Council of Elrond where they mention why can't Tom Bombadil just take the ring, and then Gandalf kind of explains that the ring doesn't matter to him at all, and that the ring has no power over him, but he has no power over the ring. It's just kind of like this weird yin and yang. So it does come up at the council. I think Elrond asked Gandalf about it. Like, they talk about it openly with everyone. So I would say that the people there all understand him a bit. But I don't know if he ever really comes up again, minus the Return of the King, where he does come up again. Anyways, Tom Bombadil in general, to me, is just kind of funny. It's just... Yeah. It's a weird moment for sure. It's hard to get used to. But the more and more I go through the book, the more I start to like his character. He seems to me like a guy who has figured out life. He went and just made his own way in life and doesn't necessarily care about the overall rest of the world. He's only focused on his own spot in heaven, and that's just him. Like, it's him and his wife, Goldberry, right? So it's just he loves everything about his land, his little slice of heaven that he's got. He loves it all, and he loves Goldberry, and those are the two things he makes clear. And like, then
he was pretty protective of those things, right?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, like, he's the I can't remember the sprite of the forest kind of thing, right? So he takes care of that little slice of his forest.
Okay, because I think when I was first reading through the arc with him, I was thinking, like, did he have some sort of like ulterior motive? And I'm just like, I just wasn't quite sure. I think when I first started reading through, I was like, oh, maybe he's secretly working for Sauron.
Well, I guess the thing too is that Gandalf does tell Frodo when he leaves, you're going to meet characters, and like, don't trust everyone. Like, in fact, like,
maybe that's why I was
be quick not to trust anyone, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And the first real character besides Farmer Maggot and his family that they meet is Tom Bombadil. So I do think it's a moment for you as the reader to sort of judge, like, is this a bad guy? So it's probably right for you to start thinking like that. Like, why is this guy being so nice to them? This wife who clearly is magical as well. But it all turns out funny because they're just so nice to them. They help them out so much. And I think it's hilarious because it also builds that the hobbits are not equipped for this journey. They go in and they instantly get taken out by a willow tree that puts them all to sleep, and then starts to like take them all into its branches and roots and takes them down. And Tom Bombadil has to sing to this tree and get it to release all the hobbits. So that's like a funny little moment where like the hobbits, they go on their adventure, they instantly get swallowed by a tree, so they don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I also think that was a good progression in terms of watching unveiling what's going to happen to the hobbits, because I think they know to an extent that they should be on their guard or have their guards up, but even if they do, they're so ill-equipped to do anything because they've never done anything like this. So the slightest change in their path is going to completely throw them off. And then
for sure,
they really did need the help of other people throughout just about everything, except for, I guess, later on when it's they still needed help in the end, but when Frodo and Sam are completely separated and they're just on their own, they do have to figure out a lot of things just for themselves. But maybe by then, I don't know if it's out of pure motivation to keep going, or they happen to have actually learned a lot from their previous experiences. But
it is to set up that arc of their experience, I would say, because it's the four of them together, and they can barely do anything. Like I said, they get taken out by a tree. But at that moment, I think it's just really interesting that these four kids come up to it. It almost seems like four kids come up to this man, and they propose like the issues of the world in the palm of Frodo's hand. They're like, this is what's going on. Like, Tom sees the ring, right? And then apparently in the book he puts on the ring and it does nothing. It doesn't turn him invisible, and he just laughs, and then he puts it back in Frodo's hand, and then he just continues on his way, right? And I just think it's hilarious because they are saying like, this is a man who, he's got his priorities, he's got what he cares about, and the rest of the world doesn't matter to him. He's got that bit, and that's all he wants. That's all he cares about. And it's very like weirdly stoic and noble, and I just love that about Tom. And then the best part is, as soon as he sends them on their way, he gives them the ponies. They go on their way, and they instantly go to the barrows, and they get a barrow wight, and a barrow wight takes them out and captures them. And they have to get Tom Bombadil to come back and save them again. So I just think it's hilarious. They go on their way, and then they instantly go like the wrong way and go right to the barrows, and they get taken out by a wight. So again, proves that they just don't know what they're doing, and it becomes like scary because you're like, are they even gonna make it to, well, at that time, Bree? Like, are they even gonna make it to the Brandywine and all that? So Oh, so I do love the Tom Bombadil section. It's just really funny. It's kind of this little mini arc that happens. It's its own kind of Rivendell within the Shire. Well, not the Shire, but it's its own Rivendell from the journey from the Shire to the Prancing Pony. So,
right,
like a halfway breathing point. It's a save point, I guess, from a video game. So
yeah, it's a checkpoint that they ended up rewinding from and then having to go back to again, and then which is that's sort of like a natural occurrence. Yeah, if in the middle of playing games or whatever, when you're trying to figure out your own path, like you will make a mistake or you'll encounter something, and then you might backtrack naturally just because you need to figure out like, oh, was that really, like, if you had the opportunity to double check, was that really the right choice,
right?
And then you do it and then realize, okay, yeah, this was the wrong choice. Yeah, it seems like a natural flow for what's supposed to take place. Yeah, I like that.
Something I just want to mention too, so moving on a little bit here, so Aragorn is treated very differently in the book series to the movie series. He's probably one of the most jarring characters for differences between the two materials. So when they meet him at the Prancing Pony, it's pretty much the same as the movie. Nothing's really all that different there. In fact, actually, the movie did a very good job of adapting all that. But Aragorn himself, though, is just a little bit more regal, a little bit more kingly in the books. They do talk about him with the kingly, but it's his speech above all that makes him more kingly. He's got the Shakespearean kind of speech to how he talks.
Yeah,
and
doesn't he already know? Like, okay, because correct me if I'm wrong, but in the movies, he doesn't actually. Does he not know that he is the true heir until like a certain time? But in the book, does he just always?
So that's the big difference in the book. In the movie, he is the heir to Isildur, and he definitely knows that. He doesn't think that he deserves it, so he sees the responsibility and pushes it away. That's the big thing in the movies, and it's a really good thing they did with his character in the movies because it plays off very well. And I think a lot of that is also a testament to just Viggo Mortensen and just how he is, because he's very selfless. And it really shines on screen, so it makes Aragorn amazing. Like, you just want this humble guy to be king by the end of the movies, right? In the books, he's very different. Like, he understands his journey. He's got a poem written about him. All that is gold does not glitter. All that is something is not lost. All that glitters is gold. All that glitters is gold. All that something is not lost, or something. I can't remember the exact poem right now, but it's a poem for Aragorn. It's literally about him taking on his responsibility as being the king. He does show some concern about being king, but he's not super humble about it. But he's also not like too bravado about it. He's just somewhere in the middle. He just understands his responsibility and knows that at some point he'll have to take it on. So,
yeah, he definitely comes across that way as like, always like the air of always knowing, which I find, it was definitely, it was different following the character in the book because I just wasn't, I guess like I wasn't able to connect with him in the same way that I could with the movies. Yeah. But I guess, which might be, actually, man, I feel like he had a very diminished role in the books compared to the movies, now that I really think about it.
Well, there's a lot going on in the book one, but it's not necessarily his dialogue in the book. It's mostly the people around him explaining why he's so important. In the movie, it's a lot of show, not tell. In the movie, it's a lot of like the dialogue he directly has with people about being king, or him like clearly not wanting to accept the responsibility about it and then taking it on. So they show it a lot more in the movie about that, but in the book it's usually people discussing it. Like there's a lot of good key moments that I try to pick up on. But so anyways, I just want to point that out because you do see it a lot in the first book there, that Aragorn is quite different, and to that matter, Aragorn and Arwen are quite different in the books. They're treated off screen, and I don't mean that literally, I just mean they're like not in the actual chapter you're reading. It'll mention like Aragorn and Arwen a little bit. And Aragorn will say a poem about Beren and Luthien, about kind of his love as well with Arwen, but you don't see like them on a bridge kissing like you would in the movie, you know, like it's just sort of, it's sort of like Frodo kind of understanding that Aragorn has a thing with Arwen, but that's barely there, right? And she's also not this like maiden who comes to save the day during Frodo's stabbing from the Night King, from the Witch King.
Not the, I was gonna say the Lich King, but that's StarCraft or Warcraft.
Yeah, that is, it's also not Arwen coming there to save him, so you don't get that like banter between Aragorn and Arwen there either. It's now Glorfindel, an elf from Rivendell, who's come to save Frodo, and Frodo's also not in such dire need as he is in the movie. The movie's all about urgency, and it's like, get us out now, there's 9 wraiths that are chasing you need to get out now, and then Arwen has this crazy chase scene. The book's all more about like Frodo is really hurt, but we need to get him to Rivendell. So like this elf comes with a horse, and they're like, thank God. And they put Frodo on the horse, and he rides with Glorfindel back to Rivendell. So it's less urgent. It's more like, I'll just come back to Rivendell with you. This is faster than walking.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this accident has become your saving grace. Or something. Yeah, was that just after he? So they had all, because in the movie they were all kind of like cornered on top of this tower thing.
Weathertop.
Did they depict that this?
Yeah, so Weathertop used to be a watchtower. Yeah, and it's a degraded old watchtower now. And yeah, they go and they camp up there. It's actually, I could be wrong here, but I believe it was also Aragorn's fault, sort of, that the ringwraiths show up. In the movie, it's Merry and Pippin make a mistake and they light a fire, right? And then the ringwraiths show up while Aragorn's off looking for something, probably race.
Yeah.
In the book, I believe they make fire because they can't really see what's going on, and they're looking for Gandalf. They're supposed to meet him somewhere, and they don't know where he is. So they make fire, and Aragorn even says, making fire might make us noticed. And then they create a fire, and then they get noticed.
Yeah.
While they're noticed, Frodo is the one who panics and then puts on the ring, which he does sort of in the movie as well. Puts on the ring, and then that really attracts the ringwraiths.
Yeah.
And then they come by and they stab Frodo. The movie does a really good job of the Weathertop scene. I really enjoyed the movie scene. But the book, I mean, the same things happen really, but just sort of in sort of different ways. So anyways, yeah, most of the first two books are pretty accurate. They're pretty good. More things I want to talk about just a little bit here. Aragorn and Bilbo. It's something that happens a lot in the books. It does not happen in the movies. And it's really good. There's a lot of more, and the thing is, it's not like the movies are saying this isn't a thing. The movies just don't have time to tell you that story. Yeah. But in the books, Aragorn and Bilbo have a really good relationship. Bilbo calls him the Dunedain, which is really fun because he's the only one that calls him the Dunedain, which is based on his race and his rangerhood, being a ranger. While all the hobbits call him Strider, which is just kind of funny because that becomes his nickname, which is just his name as a ranger around Bree. So it just becomes like his nickname, right? But yeah, Bilbo calls him the Dunedain, and Bilbo and Aragorn like to spend time doing poetry and translating books. And like they just like talking as old friends. I just think that's a really fun relationship in the book that you get to have that you never see in the movies, and I would love to see that in the movies. It would have been awesome to have those two just sitting there in Rivendell just like having a good old time. I just think it's really fun,
sitting back talking about tales. Yeah,
it sounds like, and like Aragorn treats Bilbo with like such respect. It's so nice to see. It's just really fun. And like Aragorn, you can tell Bilbo is just kind of this doddering old man who just kind of says these funny things every now and then. And like Aragorn's just so nice.
Going back to the whole Dunedain thing, that reminds me, it took me a while to actually understand this, but I liked how each race had a different name for Gandalf. Because that almost made him seem like he's so much more of this like urban legend thing.
Ooh, how many can you name?
Oh, like two. Gandalf and Mithrandir.
Mithrandir.
And I really can't, because I think it was Mithrandir when they kept saying it. I'm like, wait, who are they talking about? So I searched Google, and then the first result that came up was Gandalf, and I was really confused. I'm like, wait, what? And I had to look at the wiki, and it showed the other aliases. So honestly, I can only name those two.
That's actually all I can think about too right now. As I said that, I was like, wait a minute, I think that's all I can think of. Although he does get called the White Rider and the White Wizard at 2 different points as well. And there's also debate on if he's Saruman or not. There's a later on debate where characters are like, is he Saruman? They're like, well, he kind of is Saruman, but anyways, that's neither here nor there.
Interesting.
Yeah, somebody explained that to me a little bit better, so I finally understand kind of what happens between the Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White. But yeah, no, Gandalf is handled really well in the movies, and that's actually why I haven't really talked about him so much, because when you're going through him in the books, you kind of just see Ian McKellen and you kind of just see Gandalf from the movies because he's doing pretty much the same things. He has a bit more dialogue. Other than that, there's his POV is great. I mean, he does go off and he does talk to Saruman, and he does make a mistake there, and then he goes to Rivendell and he finds Frodo there and all that. Nothing really changes from all that. It's just it's got a little bit more words in the book, but the movie does a great job, so I can't really say too much about it. The performance is great enough that the book was also good there too. There's a few lines that are a little bit different in the Mines of Moria. They kind of switch places a little bit between Gandalf and Frodo when he talks about all you have to decide is what to do when the time is given to you. He kind of tells Frodo that at a bit of a different spot, but other than that, again, Gandalf was handled so well in the movies.
Yeah, I mean, he's always there just being that figure to like act as that reminder or like that one little motivation that you didn't know you needed kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, he's pretty much their cheerleader the whole way through, which is why it's so devastating in the Mines of Moria when Gandalf does perish, because when he falls, the whole Fellowship is just, they really take this in, and it's very sad for them.
And it's just like the big domino effect for them, like falling apart more and more and more.
It's the only time when you see Aragorn actually become that person who's sort of like, I don't know if I can do this. He does say to them, I'm not sure where to go. Like, I don't know where we're supposed to go next, but I have to be the new Gandalf. And he says that. He says, I have to be Gandalf. And it's like, oh, that's so funny. It's like Aragorn sees Gandalf. He like puts him on a pedestal, right? And he's like, I have to be Gandalf now. So that, I think it's interesting. Also, let me just say real quick, Boromir in the books is not very interesting. I didn't like him all that much in the books because they don't do too much with him, and what they do is kind of very just sub-level. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it's totally there, like he's trying to say much or do much until the end where he's trying to take the ring from Frodo. But
yeah, that's true, because I didn't really think much when I was reading through. It wasn't until that scene when he's like alone with Frodo. I'm like, oh,
I know.
Wait, what's he doing? What's he up to?
Exactly. He doesn't have much to do beforehand. All they really talk about is his strength, the strength of man, and that's really all he is. He's just a character to show you what men are like. And one really interesting moment is when they're all on the mountain and they're trying to get through the snow, and Boromir is one of the characters who's able to brush all the snow out with his arms while carrying a hobbit on his back. So I think it's Pippin, and he's like marveling at the strength of Boromir, right? And Boromir's so stubborn that he's like, I could do this all day kind of thing, and he's just like taking out all the snow, right? Like, so it's interesting, but there's not enough there to have a real character. So Boromir is not very interesting in the first book, and in fact he's kind of more interesting as the books go on and you learn about his family instead of him. But the movie handles him very well. The movie, especially the extended Fellowship of the Ring movie, is very good with Boromir. They add a lot of scenes to make you actually care about him and see his transition over the time. And Boromir's character is really there to elevate Aragorn's character.
I also feel like he's really, like, they do a good job of showing how, like, as man, and like, men are susceptible to temptation. So I think like he did a good job of showing that gradual shift from being like, I thought he was fairly stoic in the beginning, like in talking about the movie, that more stoic, and gradually showing like peeling those layers and getting to the point where he's succumbing to that temptation, like, and very hard too.
The big shift in the movie, the extended movie, is Lothlorien, when the white lady speaks to him, Galadriel. She says she like understands exactly what he's going through, and she says that he's going to try to take the ring from Frodo, and he understands all of that. He also thinks that his city's going to burn and fall. He thinks that he's going to lose everything. He thinks Minas Tirith is going to destroy. He sees the tree burning. To Boromir, this quest is everything, and this all happens in the movie, not the book, which makes me so frustrated, because the movie did a great job of that. In fact, Aragorn and Boromir have this really crazy heart-to-heart in the movie, and it's so well done, and you can tell that they just care. Like, he just cares, and Aragorn cares. And that, to contrast that, when Boromir is dying and he's saying to Aragorn, like, you're one I could call king, it's just like, oh my gosh, like, he's like, do it for our people, and suddenly you're like, this is so good. That the book, I know that's what he was trying to say, but I just don't get it the way I do in the movie. So it's interesting. In fact, in the movie, in the books, that whole scene with Boromir dying and all that, and the Fellowship splitting apart at the Amon Hen there, it's not treated as a finale. In the movies, it's treated as a finale because it's the end of the Fellowship of the Ring. In the books, it's not really treated as a finale. It's kind of just treated as another inciting incident that happens
just
before
like
more
checkpoint
happens, right? Yeah, exactly.
It's just also like the natural occurrence of war. Like, people are going to die. The people that you travel with, you're going to meet new people, and then you're going to lose people.
It's definitely to show the consequences. Yeah, it's to show the consequences of like how easily the Fellowship could have fractured. I know Gandalf was one of them, and then obviously when Boromir dies, it's like this huge fracturing of the Fellowship. Yeah. And it's actually an interesting part that it took me a while to understand what was happening, but there's a Nazgul in the Fellowship of the Ring, which never happens in the movie, obviously. But right there on Amon Hen, there's this they call it the Winged Beast, I think, or the Winged Black Beast or something. The winged messenger, that's what they call it, the winged messenger. And there's something that in the dark attacks them, and they don't know what it is, and Legolas shoots him with a bow, and Legolas kills it, and he has no idea what it is. It isn't until later on in the Return of the King book that you understand what the winged beast is, and even Legolas understands at that moment. He goes, oh, that's what it was, holy smokes. And
I don't remember this. So they reference this thing that happened in book, was it 2?
Yeah, in book 2, later when Legolas finds the winged beast, like, he pretty much says, like, oh, I fell one of those back in Amon Hen or whatever, and they go like, oh, like, yeah, but there's more kind of thing, right?
It's kind of funny that they, like, the winged messengers and winged beasts, like they seem like they would be very pivotal, and then it's like it started off as a passing character and then or a passing moment, and then later on like that was important.
Yeah, cool. Exactly, right. It's very interesting. Like Legolas kind of comes to that realization as the reader also comes to that realization. But it is a weird moment, and I didn't understand what was happening the first couple times I went to the book. It was like the third or fourth listen when I finally was like, oh, is that a Nazgul? I was like, that's interesting. So
it's kind of hard. I think that's probably another reason why it is hard for me to follow. Like I like that idea in hindsight, knowing that there's kind of this like it's almost like an Easter egg kind of thing. It's like you if you know
wetting your whistle, getting you ready for what's coming on later on.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of funny. It's hard to follow if you're not used to that kind of stuff, or if you're not sure what to look out for. But but it's cool after the fact. Like, oh, right, yeah, cool. Well, props to me. It's like it's a little bit more rewarding just knowing that you kept it in mind.
Not that I'm trying to speed this whole thing along more, but I could talk for hours, obviously, about Lord of the Rings, and we are going a little bit longer. So the third and fourth books, which is the Two Towers, to me, the movies handled very, very well because they kept it concise. And honestly, every time I'm going through the audiobook, the books 3 and 4 are the slowest for me. Now, that might be controversial for other people out there that really like these scenes, and I'm not saying they're bad scenes, but I do find myself losing focus around these scenes a lot. This is where Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli are all chasing after the hobbits who are being taken by the Uruk-hai. This is when they go to Helm's Deep and they meet Theoden, and Theoden's being controlled by Wormtongue and all that. There's all these things happening there, and honestly, it plays just like it does in the movie. So it just is a long version of the same scenes that you saw in the movie, and the movie they keep it concise and they tell you what's happening really, really quickly. I just praise to the movie for that, and I don't have much more to say about these ones except for a little bit about Helm's Deep. But do you have anything about the second book that you want to talk about?
So I'm trying to think back. So book 3 and 4. So Gandalf does come back, right? But then does he not? Is it book 4 that he comes back?
Yeah, it's book 4 that he comes back. So it's Merry and Pippin when they go into Fangorn Forest after they're attacked by the Uruk-hai, which plays just like it does in the movie. They meet with Treebeard, Treebeard's got to be like one of my favorite characters.
Yeah,
like,
you know what?
In the book, Treebeard is way better than he is in the movie. And Treebeard's good in the movie. It's just that he's got way more time to talk in the book, and you get to understand him way more. And I really like him in the book. He's a great character, and he really is awesome for Merry and Pippin. And they start to grow as characters as they help Treebeard go to take out Orthanc, which is Saruman's tower. Yeah,
it's kind of funny that maybe Treebeard kind of acts as their like redemption, like for Merry and Pippin, because in the beginning they got like swallowed up by a tree. Now they're befriending a tree who helps with like taking out this whole orc army. I think that's it's a really cool addition to like the different kinds like the diversity of who takes part in the war.
For sure, especially since the Ents are neutral. They're not necessarily good or bad.
That's right. They didn't want to take place.
They're the tree herders, right? Like Merry and Pippin do suggest like you should go take them out, and he's like, well, no, this is their fight. Like I'm not doing anything. It's not until really he understands more of what Saruman's doing, and he used to have a friendship with Saruman that he's like, okay, well, like we should take an active part in this. Now the movie speeds it up by them making Treebeard accidentally fall into Orthanc and then see the devastation that just call a war in 2 seconds. But in the book, it's much more about Merry and Pippin convincing him that that's the right thing to do. Then they meet Quickbeam, like one of the coolest characters ever, the really young tree who's really fast. And then they meet all the other Ents and they go to war, and it's freaking awesome. But sorry, I kind of misspoke. It's actually Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli that meet Gandalf for the first time as the White Wizard. And and as you might recall, he doesn't know who he is. Like he doesn't know Gandalf. He goes, "Oh yeah, that's what you used to call me, right?" Because he knows himself as Mithrandir. He knows himself as so many other things. Because what happens is he kind of goes back in time and comes back to Middle Earth. Since Saruman,
I find that so fascinating.
It's really strange
because he's reborn.
Yes,
I guess in some sort of way, and
because he was Gandalf the Grey. And there has to be a white wizard, a gray wizard, a brown wizard, and 2 blue wizards. That's just how it goes, I guess, for some reason. Since Saruman, like, dirtied himself by not being Saruman the White anymore, he started to get evil, corrupted by black.
Sullied.
Yeah, and like the color is all just a metaphor, right? But the Saruman the White is him being pure. As soon as he takes on Sauron's power and he decides that he wants to fight with Sauron, he's now taking on the black. So he's taking off this Saruman the White. Once he does that, Gandalf dies. There's now a spot available for a white wizard. So when Gandalf comes back, he's actually reliving as Saruman, technically. He comes back as the Saruman as he was meant to be. Now, the movie kind of explains it like that. He goes, I guess I am Saruman as he was meant to be. So then he says, you can call me Gandalf the White. Oh, Gandalf the Grey. You can call me Gandalf the White. You know? Just like Saruman the White. So he is now the white version of Gandalf instead of the gray version of Gandalf. So it's really interesting and weird, doesn't really make sense, but at the same time, it's awesome that it happens.
I think it is really cool. I like the idea that, like, as a reborn person, it's almost like when he, like, returning as Gandalf the White, like he's joining. So it's almost like he's joining in the middle of this fight. Like it's already started to take place, right? Like the fact that they've set out on this journey and like war is going to inevitably happen. Actually, well, I guess it's already happening by this point. But I like that he's reborn as sort of like a renewed wizard who has more power, but he wasn't really involved from the, his character, though Gandalf the White, was not involved from the beginning, but he comes with those ideals that, like, he already has that. He already understands the importance of it, and so just from that point on, it's like, it's almost like it doesn't, not that it doesn't matter what happened leading up to that, but it's just so important that from this point on, this is our focus, and this is what I'm here for.
Right.
So whatever happened to me before, however we got here, like, it's great that we're here now, but honestly, like, this is what we're here to do, and this is what we're going to focus on. And we have a lot of work to do. So yeah, I liked it. It was cool.
You're right. He's very motivating. He drives the broken up fellowship of Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas right back into the fray. It's so awesome. As soon as he comes into the picture, you're like, here's a man with a plan. It's great. Yeah. And he's like, we're going to Rohan. And he's like, we're going to Helm. We're going to go to Rohan. We're going to go see Theoden. They go to Theoden. They cure Theoden. They get him into action. They tell him to go to Helm's Deep. All this stuff just starts happening, like bang, bang, bang. And you're just like, whoa. He rids out Wormtongue. He starts to help Rohan. You're just like, this is crazy. Like, he's just awesome. And so it is really good. But again, the movie handles all of it and does it very well as well. So I didn't have too much to really think about other than I love this.
I remember thinking, like, wow, Saruman is, like, completely different from what I feel from the movies. He just seems like, maybe because he's already, like, sullied himself and that he's borrowing the powers from Saruman or from Sauron. Yeah. But he just becomes like Wormtongue, I guess, he's just sort of that, like, really annoying little stupid pawn.
Yep.
That is just there. And Saruman, like, I guess he's supposed to be, to me, I would take him as he's supposed to be like the second hand or like first hand of Sauron. But he just seems almost like he seems as slithery.
Yeah, he's not. I mean? He's not really the second hand of Sauron. The way I see it is he's kind of more almost at odds with Sauron. He's just trying to be his own Sauron. He's greedy and he's slippery and he's crafty. He's very greedy. And,
yeah.
I think honestly, if the things didn't play out the way they did, I think Saruman and Sauron would have fought. I think they just would have fought for the true thing. Like, they even play that out when the Uruk-hai are taking Merry and Pippin. They think Merry and Pippin have the ring. They're taking them to Orthanc. Now, I don't think Saruman would have just given Sauron the ring. I think he would have kept it. I think he just would have kept the ring and had the ring and been like, okay, fine, I'm the new master, right? Like,
well, he was trying to convince Gandalf to, like, join him, right? And
exactly, join with me, and then we can destroy him. So he's not really, I don't know. He is interesting, but he's very crafty, and it comes off how crafty he is in the book for sure, especially in Return of the King. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Last things I want to talk about with this book, really quickly, are Helm's Deep. The difference on Helm's Deep. The difference is here. I love this moment because I think it's hilarious, but it's also interesting because it's very different to the movie. Is Aragorn when they charges out with Theoden, he says, "Ride out with me," and they ride out one last time. Aragorn's got his sword, which has actually already been reforged. The sword was reforged when we first meet Aragorn in the Fellowship of the Ring. in the books. In the movies, that doesn't happen until Return of the King. In the book, he's already got the reforged sword, and he carries it with him, and he's literally like, look at this sword. This is the sword. This is my sword. Like, he's so proud of the sword. And in the Helm's Deep section there, he comes charging out with Theoden, and he goes, behold, the blade that was broken is renewed. He yells it. He just yells that as he's killing all these Uruk-hai. I think it's so hilarious, because it's like, this guy loves this sword, man. Like,
totally.
Oh, it's really
but
funny.
more power to him. He gets to wield this really ultra cool sword, and nobody else does. So
now Helm's Deep,
I would probably do the same.
Yeah, and Helm's Deep just doesn't really go in the books like it does in the movie. In the movie, there's a lot of desperation, a lot of no hope. There's no hope. And then there's like an old man shooting like a bow at like something like whoops, like oh, these guys are inexperienced and all this stuff. And then the elves come and save the day. It doesn't really happen like that in the books. In the books, they kind of just like they get renowned vigor from Theoden, from Aragorn, from Éomer, and then from Gandalf, and it just ends up working out for them because of their power and strength in numbers. They all think they're gonna die, but they make it anyways, just because they work together. And that's a good message too. Like, I don't know, the movie's not bad at all. It's just I do like how in the book it's not such a big deal. They just try and they win. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have anything about Helm's Deep you want to talk about? Because I'm gonna switch over to Frodo and Sam.
No, we can switch over.
The only thing I gotta say about Frodo and Sam is that they go oh, actually, I guess, yeah, so the whole Faramir thing, so I can get into that. So Faramir is really good in the books. I don't like him in the movies all that much. But in the books, Faramir is just this really stoic, noble character, and he doesn't play around with, like, keeping the ring himself or anything like that. He understands pretty quickly what Boromir must have gone through, and figures out for himself that he doesn't want to go down the same path as his brother. And he ends up being
one of the... kind of, like, whiny and scared, or...
In the movies, he kind of wants to prove to his father that he's better than Boromir, so he decides to take the ring over to Cirith Ungol.
Right, so he's like teen angst.
Or not Cirith Ungol, I'm sorry.
Minus Cirith?
Or is it Cirith Ungol? I've totally lost the name of it right now. But the small, like, destroyed city that's right in front of Minas Tirith. Remember that is Cirith Ungol. Because... Whatever, it doesn't really matter.
Something.
Minus Morgul? Minus Morgul is where
check the maps.
Minus Morgul is where the ring race are from. I think it is Cirith Ungol. Cirith Ungol? Let me just find out. No, it's not Cirith Ungol.
I'm gonna go in the map.
No, I'm wrong.
That's like...
What's it called? Osgiliath. Osgiliath is what it's called. I swear that came from my brain, not from the thing. I realized at that moment I was screwing it up. Cirith Ungol is where the steps are. That's the steps up to Shelob's lair. And that's what I wanted to get to, is that Frodo and Sam and finding Shelob and all that, that's actually in Two Towers. That's in books 3 and 4, which is really interesting because it's in Return of the King in the movies. But,
is it?
Yeah, it's actually in 3 and 4. Because actually the ending is Sam thinking Frodo is dead. Now, I think this is really pivotal. As a book reader, if you're reading the last books, 3 and 4, it ends in that crazy, awesome arc where, there's also no, like, Frodo and Sam getting mad at each other on the stairs. There's no, like, Frodo saying, go home, Sam. There's none of that. Like, there's no, like, crumbs on his jackets. Like, none of that happens, right?
Right.
Other than that, it's pretty accurate to the movie, or the movie and the book are pretty accurate. But Frodo and Sam, they remain, like, together the whole time. Like, there's no way they're ever going to break their fellowship. That just made no sense. But when eventually Frodo gets hit by Shelob and Sam just, like, destroys that spider, he's, like, devastated, and he cries. And it even says he doesn't know how long, but he sits next to his master for, like...
And just weeps.
An indescribable amount of time just crying, doesn't know what to do next.
Yeah.
And then eventually his brain is telling him, you got to get up, you got to go on, you got to take the ring, you got to continue going on. But he can't do it. He can't physically even move. And it literally just ends with the orcs... Oh, no, he doesn't think he's dead, I don't think. Or no, maybe he does.
I think he does because I think, don't they... Doesn't it end with the orcs, like, he hears the orcs saying, like, they found like a body, so, like, take it, and they start... Oh, no. He understands. He's got the ring on. He puts the ring on so the orcs don't see him, and then he hears the orcs because you have, like, a better hearing. And he can hear the orcs talking, and then he understands that Frodo's not dead. He's just limp because the spider paralyzed him, so that she could eventually have her way with him. And then they take Frodo with them up to the tower. So he understands all that, and then the book ends. So you, as the reader, I guess you know that Frodo's in major danger, but not dead. And Sam has kind
the
of
ring.
ends with, like, Sam tries to run, like, towards them, but he runs into something and knocks himself out. Doesn't he try to, like, chase after them? And then, because I feel like
no, there's a lot of them. There's a whole troop, so he's a little bit scared about chasing after them. He does think about a lot
Okay.
of the things though. But no, he just watches them walk away to where the tower is, and then he decides he's gonna go after them, but keep the ring on and follow them back to their tower. And then it ends, right? So that's for people who don't know, the Lord of the Rings book is treated where eventually gets split up to where we're just looking at characters. So books 4, books 3. We're just looking at Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli for the first half, and then Merry and Pippin, and Gandalf, I should say, and then Merry and Pippin for like the second half. While book 4 is all Frodo and Sam, so the whole thing is just Frodo and Sam. So it's quite long of just those two. Once you get to Return of the King in book 5, you go right back to Merry and Pippin and Gandalf and Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, all that. You go back to that story, and you go from that moment all the way up to the Black Gate before you get to know what happens to Frodo and Sam. So it's really interesting how Tolkien does that. He really takes away from you this knowledge of the whole world going on, and he really only shows you the characters he wants to show you at that time. So you go through the Battle of Minas Tirith, you go through the Pass of the Dead, you go through like a whole bunch of stuff. You go through like Merry and Pippin, and like Merry going off and fighting with the Riders of Rohan. You go with Pippin going through the Tower of the Citadel. He becomes a tower guard for the Citadel, and he gets obsessed with that the Palantir, which is pretty interesting. You go through all that, and you get all the way up to the Black Gate, to the moments where they decide to just destroy Sauron, even though they've got like 6,000 men versus Sauron's endless army. And then the mouth of Sauron comes out and says, "I have the shirt," and it's the mithril shirt of Frodo's. And even you as the reader, you're like, where is Frodo right now? Like, you don't know really what's going on. You just know that Frodo is captured and that Sam was going to go after him. But you have no idea. So as Gandalf loses hope and thinks that Frodo's dead, you, the reader, also think it's possible Frodo's dead. I have no idea. So I just find that really interesting, because that's so... In the movie, it's all handled simultaneously, right? So I really like how the book does that. It rips that away from you and makes
it's like a good way to like kind of it's like distracting you, right? Like it's like putting something in front of you and then making you kind of realize or like and forget at the same time that like, oh, what, there's something is missing. I'm not getting something, but I'm gonna find out like very soon. So it's it's nice that you get that kind of it's almost like you kind of get like a mental break in a way, just because you had so much time to just follow along with what was happening with Frodo and Sam. And then as it's like as they get separated, like as they have a break from each other, you get a break to kind of just go back to like what everybody else is trying to do for their end of the war, which is like, it is meaningful, but maybe not as pivotal. Like, it's definitely not as pivotal as what Frodo and Sam have to do as their job, right? But still, it's important enough that like, okay, we're gonna put some focus here, and let's introduce like some more things. I find the character alone, the mouth of Sauron.
Mouth of Sauron. Just, like, he's so interesting. Like such an
interesting kind of like concept.
Yeah, right? He's a weird like they barely explain it. It's just a man who's been corrupted by Sauron over time, but eventually he just becomes the voice of Sauron. He's this one who speaks for him. He's kind of a right hand man or a lieutenant that's just been like very trusted by Sauron to do the speaking for him. And I love how he just jabs all the main characters really quickly, and you can just tell he's just so good at insulting you that like you're gonna want to do something. So I don't know about you, but Return of the King is one of my favorite books. It gets really interesting again. As I said, that Two Towers gets into a lull. Return of the King brings it right back with a driving force. They make it really interesting really quickly.
I mean, well, okay. Well, I guess the biggest difference that I see with if I read and watched properly, but the movie itself for Return of the King, there's so much, like, they just waited till this movie to do like all of the action sequence.
They put, like, there is a lot of action like, in Return of the King, but they did throw in more action that happens. More
action, but I think they focused on it more so because they're like, the lighting allows you to see everything that's happening. Whereas you didn't really get a lot of that in the first and second, because they're traversing through like the forest. It's all dark. Like the Nazgul are all black. All their clothes are dark, and everything's just like under the moonlight. That's like their main source of light, that they show. So it's hard to follow. But now for this one, it's like here's your payoff in the movie. You get to watch all these action sequences, whereas in the book, I find like, yes, there's action, but like it's not so heavily focused on, because when in the movie we watch the what's it called, like the dead come and fight, and they like swarm over the whole orc army. But in the book, it's like they don't really go into detail about describing all that, right? Like they kind of just mention it in passing. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's more
Yeah.
just mentioned in passing. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I think to that end, like I almost kind of still like the fact that it is less heavily focused on portraying all that, because ultimately we still want to find out what's happening with the ring, right?
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I guess it's nice watching it for the movie, but at the same time for me, like going through the book, I like that wasn't the focus. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the book really does Minas Tirith well. Well, I mean, sorry, it created Minas Tirith, I should say. But I mean, again, coming from the point of view where I saw the movie first, then went to the book, you get so much more of the how broad that battle is, and it's just it's fun to see everything going on. Up from Denethor's crazy antics to Faramir going out to fight on the battle lines first, to getting injured, coming back, to Pippin saving his life, to Theoden making his like battle cry to the rest of the riders of Rohan, being like, we're gonna die, but we're gonna do it nobly, and like going out on that last charge, ride now, ride to death and to ruin, and they all jump out. To like Éomer, like just like freaking out and looking at the Oliphants who start to come from the gate, and then just being like, oh my god, like he's like, what are we supposed to do? Like, and the movie does an amazing job. There's definitely nothing wrong with how the movie did it. It's just fun to go through it in the book and have so much more information thrown at you with all this, because you get to understand how the characters are thinking through it all too. And pretty much the same thing happens in the book and the movie, other than the past of the dead. The dead don't come up with Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli in that moment. It doesn't really happen. But and the movie just kind of does it for the show of it. But like the same things happen. It's just you get more in the book, so it just becomes juicier and more fun.
Yeah, and the character interactions are completely different. Like the relationship between Legolas and Gimli, it's not so head buddy as it is in the movies, right? Like they needed that, I guess, because they wanted to diversify the like the kinds of characters that they have. They need to have like a balance of like like you said, even within the Hobbits, they've got to have the stoic one, they've got to have like the grounded, not so grounded, like comic relief one. But
Gimli becomes comic relief, I'm sorry, and then Legolas becomes exposition. You know, they're taking the hobbits to Isengard. Like he's literally he explains. He's looking at you, the camera, and is explaining to you what's happening next in the plot.
Yeah. By the way, in case you didn't know, this is what's happening.
A Balrog from Morgoth. He's like he's always like telling you exactly what's happening at that moment. And Aragorn is the actual one with character. Unfortunately, that's not totally true to the movies, but that just seems to be the cliche of the movie. Is that's what always is happening. Gimli makes a joke, Legolas explains what they have to do next, and then you see Aragorn actually do that thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I do. As much as I like the interactions that we have in the books, I probably won't ever forget the scene. I can't remember the exact details of how it goes, but when they are in the middle of the war, or like that big battle that Gimli strikes down maybe like one or two, and he's counting the orcs that he's killing, like 36, 37, and then what's his face? And then Legolas like slides along the Oliphant and like shoots down like a whole bunch of orcs, and then also takes down the Oliphant. And then Gimli's like, that still only counts as one, or something, even though he just took down like a whole bunch plus the Oliphant. And
it was a good moment. I enjoyed it in the theater for sure.
Yeah, it's fun.
But Gimli and Legolas are more broad in the books. The two of them have actually a good friendship where they actually understand each other. They disagree a lot, and then they start to agree more and more and more. And the breaking point is actually right in Lothlorien, when Gimli totally puts the moves on Galadriel and gets three strands of her hair. And he asks for one and he gets three, and he's so happy about it. And he confides into his newfound buddy Legolas, and that's the moment when they start their friendship. By the time, you're right, in that moment in Minas Tirith when they're like still having that like friendly competition, they genuinely care about each other, and they're like worried about each other's health. Like, don't die out there, because like they've now at that point created a plan to go to Fangorn Forest. Legolas wants to take Gimli to Fangorn Forest, and Gimli wants to take Legolas to the mines and Helm's Deep and show him how beautiful the mines are there. And it's so interesting because you're just like, oh, these guys, like they just love hanging out with each other. It's so cool.
It's great because like we get to see that friendship blossom, but then we also get a glimpse of them having things to look forward to after
for sure.
War.
Yeah, actually,
so that means
there's hope for
us.
afterwards.
We're not just looking forward to the end of the war, but we're looking forward to seeing what everybody else is going to do after the war.
I know,
because ultimately, like that's what they want. They want to be able to do these things after the war. So I find that this helps because then instead of having to wind down at the end of the book, trying to capitalize on like how can we conclude every one of these characters, like finish the story arcs and everybody's satisfied. If we get a chance to see this beforehand, then it's already in our mind like, okay, great, so this is going to happen. If we achieve what we need, then we get it.
Yeah, exactly. Then, it's a way of paying it off early. Now I don't want to jump ahead too quickly, but I also, we're gonna have like a freaking long podcast if we carry on. So speaking about that, this is a perfect segue from that moment. I will be jumping ahead now. This book I think is such a good way to tell a story, because the main action of the whole thing that Frodo's trying to do is drop this ring into Mount Doom. And when we finally get that moment, in a lot of modern books today, when the whole thing is done, when everything's done, you're lucky if you've got maybe a chapter left after that, and then the book's done and it's over. A good example is Harry Potter. At the end of the Harry Potter franchise, spoilers for anybody, when the main battle is done, when Harry and Voldemort have their final duel and Voldemort is down, there's only one chapter, and you get one small chapter of what's happened. And unfortunately, it's not even the characters that you know and love, it's actually those characters in the future, and it's now them as older people that you can't relate to and you don't understand very well. So it's this really weird, jarring and retching feeling where it pulls you away from the focus to something else just to make you feel happy. And it's not, in my opinion, it's not very satisfying. In Lord of the Rings, it's like the exact opposite. It's insane. It not only is long, but it is long and arduous. It is full of just moments, like crazy moments that pay off like crazy. Talk about.
I would say I was actually thrown off a little bit, because then like after they get back to the Shire and then realize that like things aren't the way they left it. It's been overrun. It's overruled and stuff. And I think we already knew that it was going to be like related to Sauron. I think there were hints at it before that Sauron was.
I didn't see it coming. I had no idea. I just thought it was going to be like Uruk-hai or just maybe some dumb hobbits or something.
Right. Well, okay, because I think because Gandalf mentioned that be wary that Sauron had an interest in the Shire.
That's like, true. He does lead him up a few times, saying like his voice is still very powerful. Like he could do more damage. Yeah.
So, but then I think because there was still so much leading up to it, and then he's like they're going about fighting all these ruffians. That's like how they're portrayed, like all these ruffians. And they go through like several waves of ruffians, and I'm like, oh man, like when are they gonna get to like, do we really need to see all this? And like, I guess we do.
It's interesting.
Throughout it is interesting, yeah. Like I think in the beginning of all that, I was like, man, like we already know that the hobbits have been tested throughout all these journeys. Like, do we have to see how they are now? But it took me to the point where we actually got to Sauron that I'm like, you know what? It actually was good that we got to see them that way, because like they are now back kind of in their element per se, and it's nice that we can see them together having that confidence and not wavering. Right. And this is now who they are. Like the way that they travel, the way that they decide to defend what they believe. Like there's like no wavering. They're not worried that like something's gonna kill them. They're just going for it, and this is kind of like what that whole purpose was, like what the whole journey was almost like intended to do. It was It was almost intended to just like make everybody feel united again as they used to feel before Sauron came into play, right? So
in those in that Dan Harmon's writing story tips that I had a podcast episode on not that long ago. The end of the circle was have the main character return home to the exact spot of where they started the story, having changed, and that's how you tell a good having changed or having learned, and that's how you tell a good story. And man, Tolkien goes like crazy with that having changed. Getting story arcs, you get a story arc for every single character in this book. Every single character in this book has something that happens, including Wormtail and including Saruman. It's crazy, but they all have some kind of arc, and they realize something by the end of it. But not to get into all the minutia, but like even Éowyn and like Faramir have like crazy arcs by the end of it, which is just really interesting. Aragorn's obviously got his returning of being a king, and Arwen returning as a not going off to sail to the White Shore. She has a private moment with her father beforehand and decides to stay home and be with Aragorn, sacrificing her immortal life. But the hobbits themselves and Bilbo and Gandalf, like all of them have so much more to do and to say. and they go back to Rivendell, and Aragorn becomes king for a little while. We get to see what he's like as king. Aragorn and Gandalf travel the world a little bit. Aragorn's noble enough to help the hobbits go back to Rivendell, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But then Aragorn
rides with them.
Yeah, Aragorn finds the tree. He finds a white tree just out in the wild, and he's sort of like, oh wow, like this tree's like, I can't believe this is here. And then Gandalf's like, it's a sign that like you're now going to be the king. And he takes the white tree back and he replants the tree at Minas Tirith, and like it's like, okay, like the threat is over, and we still get to see all these great moments for these characters. And it is weird at first reading all this stuff, but when you come back to this book for even the second time, you start to realize like, well, this is why you like these characters, because you wanted to see these moments. Like just as much as Harry Potter, the best moments are where Harry and Ron and Hermione are just doing homework. That seems to be the best moments of Harry Potter. The best moments of Lord of the Rings are also when everything's done and you get to finally see these characters be who they wanted to be. And seeing the hobbits come back to the Shire, and actually just before that, when Gandalf is with them, and they realize the Shire, something's up. And they're like, okay, well, Gandalf, do you want to come and help us? And Gandalf's literally like, no, I'm going to go hang out with Tom Bombadil. Because Gandalf's like, I'm done. Like, he's like, you guys know so much more than you think you do at this moment. He's like, you guys are way better than you don't even know yet, because you haven't even gone home. And he's like, seriously,
you haven't tested all that you've learned.
Yeah, he's like, go home. I'm going to hang out with Tom Bombadil because he sounds like the most interesting character. And Gandalf and Tom, they're going to talk about crazy things that none of us could ever understand. So the hobbits go back home. But yeah, that moment where they come back home and suddenly they're like, wait a minute, what? Like, everything's overrun. But they start talking to the hobbits, and they're like, did none of you ask why we were doing this? And suddenly they realize that like the hobbits just kind of let it happen. Yeah. And that's when they they're
very submissive.
They take that look at themselves though, and they can see themselves in the hobbits that just kind of let it happen. And they go like, wow, like that's how we used to be? Okay, never mind, hold on. And they just like create an army of hobbits and then just like destroy this thing. It's so crazy watching it happen. And like you realize that Merry is a great and strong leader. You know, Pippin is a strong leader. Sam's a strong leader. And even Frodo is a strong leader. When he says no hobbit will murder another hobbit, like make sure that doesn't happen. That's not what we do here in the Shire. And everyone's just like, okay, we'll do that, you know? And you're like, wow, like even Frodo has that humanity to say like, we will not murder each other. That will not happen. And it's like, so much heart to tell in that story. When you get to see your characters come to their full arc and then enact what they've learned, it's a great way to tell a story, and we don't see it these days anymore because it's not quick. There's more story to tell, unfortunately. Much like our podcast, it just keeps going, you know.
yeah. I thought the whole interaction afterwards with Saruman and Wormtongue was a little bit weird. I think it almost seemed like it was just one of those just like a comedic ending, if you know what I mean. Like it probably wasn't meant to be comedic, but
well, I think it's supposed to show you that's like I was saying, Saruman's arc. It's supposed to show you how far the greed got to him, to the point where he shrunk to like he was as powerless as another hobbit. You know, he got to the end there, and even so, when he was just like this helpless little thing, Frodo still didn't want him dead. He still says no, let him go. Yeah, and he just says let him go. And then even Saruman's like, I should respect you for that, but I wish you like all the bad luck in the world, kind of thing. Like he's still evil.
Yeah, like I still can't wish you well because
But then Frodo tries to be nice. He's like Wormtail, or Wormtongue, sorry. Freaking what's her face stealing all the Lord of the Rings names, by the way. Aragog. It's just Aragorn.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Butterbur.
Yep.
Barleyman Butterbur. It's like okay. And then Neville Longbottom, the Longbottom Leaf. It's like, okay.
Oh, all right.
This chick is just stealing everything. Wormtail, Wormtongue. So anyways, even when Frodo says, Wormtongue, you haven't done anything wrong. Just go home. Like, you're fine. Stop listening to this guy. Like, clearly, he's not the right one to choose. Look at how far we've come. Like, look who you're with now. Even visually, he's as bad as he always was. Yeah. And then Wormtongue's just like, oh, I can finally be free. And he's about to be free, and that's when Saruman rats him out. And then Wormtongue just gets pissed off because he's already crazy at that moment, and then kills Saruman. Does he kill himself? He must kill himself.
No, right after he kills Saruman, he like runs out the door and just gets shot.
Oh,
so there are a bunch of hobbits that are waiting just around with bows and arrows. And I just find it just seems so something about it is just very comedic to me.
Yeah, but it tells you, the reader, so much about how to be a person too, which is why I like Tolkien, because his books are very inspiring to be just to be the best you that you can be, because there's so much more than just a fantasy story that this is telling you. It's trying to be like a life novel, much like if it was a C.S. Lewis book or something. It's like trying to tell you the larger story about how to be a good person. And that's like the moment where Frodo, who's gone through everything, like he is as good as it could be. He was so selfless in that moment, letting them both go free and understanding the situation for exactly what it was. And them just dying. It's just, I know it seems weird. It can seem anticlimactic, obviously, and it wouldn't make a good movie. But for me, going through the books and just wanting more and more and more, it's just become such a great moment for Frodo. And then the subtleties at the very end, just to pad out this podcast even more. The subtleties at the end, when Sam starts having kids, and he's so sad, and he's like, Frodo, like, there's no room for me to live with you in Bag End. And Frodo's like, well, just have the kids live here with me. He's like, you could all live in my house. And you're just like, oh my God, Frodo, like, it's so insane.
Which is probably his plan the whole time, right?
Exactly.
It was almost like he was kind of like not breeding Sam or breeding Sam to do that. But I mean, he, like, because Bilbo always had that kind of accommodative heart.
Yeah. Hospitality. They're always very hospitable.
Yes. Yeah. I think all hobbits are, but I think we get a chance, more of a chance to see it through Bilbo and Frodo. And you worry
that Frodo doesn't have it for Sam as much as Sam does for Frodo, but you start to see at the end how much Frodo understands Sam and cares about him, and you start to really see it, how much by his actions, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
And then it gets him to, like, persuades him to come sneak out with him so that he can, like, bring him kind of like one last time, like, I'll be with you for this journey. And without Sam realizing that that's what's going to happen until they get to... Oh,
and even when they find the, like, subtle spot, like, remember when we saw the elves here? And it's, like, a little spot in the forest? And it's like, it's like all the callbacks. Oh, yeah. I love that.
Yeah. This is where you hid, or this is where we hid when we first saw the Nazgul coming around the pathway, and then...
Yeah. See, all that is callbacks for the reader as well, to also go, oh, remember that? Remember that journey?
Yeah.
Like, remember this whole journey you've been on? The whole point of why you're reading this book? Remember that? And, like, it makes you just excited. I don't know. It does a lot. Small things, too, just before that... Just before they leave for Rivendell, Sam gets a seed that he plants. And, and that is such a good story. I love that, because the Shire is cut down. There's no more trees. So then Sam gets all sad about it. But he's a gardener. But what does he do? He gets to grow everything back himself. And it all comes back even better. But the best part about the story is that Sam has no idea that's going to happen. He just decides to plant these seeds in hopes that they'll grow. And they end up growing so well.
I think somebody convinces him, or, like, reminds him, like, hey, didn't you get, like, the seed and dust from...
It's Mary,
Yeah. And so he's like, oh, well, I don't know what to expect, but I'll
just does
try
it anyways. Yeah. Oh, and I just love how Sam gets so satisfied. He just gets to regrow the Shire, and he grows a huge tree where Bilbo makes his speech at the beginning of the book. And it's like, it's just really cool. And then also when Frodo names their child, because he was going to name his son Frodo, but then it ended up being a daughter.
Girl.
Yeah.
So he said Eleanor, I think.
It was
Eleanor.
It was a flower, I thought. Yeah, maybe it is Eleanor.
Well, they were gonna do a flower, but then decided not to, because they wanted something that was, like, beautiful. And while all flowers are beautiful, I'm sure
I thought it was
Eleanor.
An elven flower they went for. Maybe that's just what they were talking about.
Oh, maybe Eleanor was that flower?
I'm not sure.
Eleanor was a small star-shaped yellow flower. You're right.
Yeah.
But Eleanor, so ELANOR.
It's pretty sure it was a flower. Anyways, I just love that. Again, it's just a fun thing. Frodo's like, Sam, you don't gotta do that for me. Like, here. He's like, here's a beautiful name right here. And then Sam does it anyways. It's like, so good. Anyways, then the white sails and all that. And Frodo sails off into the sunset with Gandalf and Bilbo. That's all handled very well in the movie, too. It's done pretty much the same. Only minor difference is Frodo doesn't tell Merry and Pippin that he's going to the white sails. And they show up on horses. I love that moment. They're like, you can't escape us. Like, we know exactly what you're doing. It's just like, oh, man. Like, they're so smart.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's really just to show, like, how tight-knit they are. Like, it's showing the camaraderie, right? Like, we're a part of you. We're with you all the way to the very end.
Yeah.
And, like, the end was not just throwing the ring or not getting the ring into Mount Doom. The end is, like, their lives.
Exactly. Like, the end is fully Frodo's life. It's all of Frodo's life. It's just and then at the very ending too, the last line of the whole book is just so good. I know the movie does it very well, but just that last page of the book is the most satisfying ending to a book. It's so good.
See, the very last line is, he drew a deep breath. Well, I'm back. he said. But I assume you might be referring to a little bit more than just that.
Well, no, that's kind of what I mean. It's just I mean, he says I'm home in the movie, and but yeah, it's just like you're following Sam, and you're just like, this is so crazy. Like, he's gone back home, and he comes home to his beautiful wife and his beautiful kids, and he's so happy, and life is just so good for him. And then you realize, boom, it just ends, and you're like, oh my god, right. I guess it's finally all over. Like, everything I just went through, like, I guess everything's good now. It's just so fun. I love that.
Yeah. Although, I mean, it doesn't have to be over, because if you do borrow...
if you go into the appendices and continue on.
After, exactly. There's Appendix A.
Yep. You can find out that Gimli and Legolas, they both venture off together. They actually both take a boat to the White Sails. The last boat that went off into the White Sails.
Have you actually read through all of the appendix?
Well, the audio...
did they include that in the audiobook?
Yes, the audiobook I listened to. It includes everything. It actually includes the forward notes from Tolkien at the beginning of the book, too, which are really good notes that I promise that you should go through.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would be interested.
This has been a very long episode. I apologize to people. Unless
2 episodes in a row.
Unless this is what you're looking for and you were really hoping for some full-on, in-depth thing about the books, we could have gone way more in-depth, but man, we got to keep our podcast to a certain length as long as we can. Let us know what you thought about this episode, though, because I had a lot of fun talking about it. It's just really cool. I really like nerding out about this. I haven't had a platform like this to talk about the books ever, really, so...
Oh boy, yeah.
I hope you got everything out that you wanted to talk about with the books. I hope so.
I think so. I mean, I'll probably have more once I get a chance to listen to the audiobooks, because like I said, it was difficult for me to retain a lot of the information.
Yeah.
And I feel bad about it. Like I think towards some points I was kind of reading it just to get through it, and because I kept renewing them from the library, that I'm like, I felt bad, like, oh, other people want to read these books too.
Don't worry about it. The books are like they are. There's moments of interest that are high, and then there's moments of dull lows, right? And for me, I've just noticed the trend that I enjoy the first and third books more than the second, but there's just moments all around where I generally lose focus, and I don't know everything about Lord of the Rings. It comes and goes, so...
Yeah.
I promise you, though, there's going to be a point where you're like, I should read that again. That's going to happen to you at some point. Once you read it once, you're hooked.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I immediately want to listen to the audiobooks, but then I also want to get through some of the other things that are on my list.
I think you should take a break. I think you should honestly just put it down.
Yeah.
Take a break. Like, I did that. I took a year break. I took a year break, and then suddenly there I was coming back to it, so.
Yeah. I'll come back to it next year.
Good.
And then when we're on our, let's see, so we're episode 55. So when we get to episode 110, it'll be like our annual review.
Oh
of
my
Lord
gosh.
of the Rings.
You know I'm down for that. I mean, I barely talked about Treebeard. I barely talked about so many things. So,
oh yeah.
I wanted to mention also, let me just really quickly say that Tolkien does this one weird thing with his writing that I didn't like at all, where he says, and then he knew no more. He says that like 5 times in the book for different characters. He says it for Frodo. He says, and then he knew no more. And then the page ends, and then you have to flip the page. It does it for Frodo. He does it for Sam. He does it for Pippin. He does it for Merry. It's so annoying. And then he knew no more. Because that's not true. Because he does know more the next page, but it's like it's like this like literary device he likes to use, and unfortunately he uses it too much, and it frustrates me every time I hear it. But
well, it's probably just relating to like whatever happened in that, like specific to that.
Oh yeah,
moment.
I mean Pippin gets hit by a troll, like Frodo gets hit by something, I can't remember what. Sam, I think it's when Sam's weeping for Frodo, you know, and then he knew no more. It's like it's dramatic, sure, it's not true. But it's dramatic. It's bizarre, and I don't like it. Maybe back then people didn't used to do that, and then now I feel like it's just cliche. But I don't like it.
Right.
It's not effective in my eyes.
Yeah.
Anyways, do you have anything else to say?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, at this point. All right, Anth0z, where can the audience find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Anth0z1. That's at ANTH0Z1.
And if you want to find me, you can also find me at Twitter, but at Mattbrush Gaming. If you want to check out this podcast in video format, you can go to Mattbrush Gaming on YouTube or type in the Scumm podcast. If you want to listen to this as a regular podcast, go to any of your favorite podcasting platforms and type in the Scumm podcast. You can give us a like, a subscribe, a heart, a high five, a thumbs up, an Anth0z. You can do a bunch of that. Or you can
give me a me?
You can give me a full-on Anth0z. You can leave a comment and let us know what you think about the podcast. If you want to hear more hour-and-a-half long episodes about Lord of the Rings or less, let me know. You can write an essay about your thoughts on our Lord of the Rings podcast here, and by writing us an email at thescumbbarpodcast@gmail.com. We really appreciate all the audience feedback. I had a lot of fun with this episode, and I'd like to do more like this in the future. So let me know what you guys think on all that. Anth0z, in your best Pippin impersonation, I would like you to sing me Pippin's song from Return of the King, real quick.
Oh,
home is behind.
Oh, that's.
You know that song?
You should just you do it.
Oh, I just thought you knew it.
No,
the
only
fine.
thing I picture. You know what? I'll be
Denethor.
Is it Denethor?
Yeah.
I'll be Denethor, and I'm gonna be biting into a bunch of big
eating
red,
all these
fat
tomato
grapes.
Yeah.
To the edge of night.
Honestly, that's pretty accurate.
I think like I can't picture the song because like during that scene I was so distracted by Denethor's mouth.
But I do love that whole moment. That's a really good moment.
Yeah, I like that he gets to sing. Yeah.
True. All right, well that's our ending. So thanks guys.
Cool.
Everybody, thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Or listening.
Ride now for death and for ruin.
Run, you fools!
Fly, you fools! Gandalf! Okay, goodbye.
Go home.
Bye, bye.